hello, and welcome to another edition of the Sit Down on the College Football Mafia Network. I'm your host, Nathan Bomber Brown. With me tonight, I've been trying to track down a knowledgeable SEC person, and Scott got back to me, and we decided to hook together. I hope this was a lot of fun. I Talk SEC, represented by Scott Moore. How you doing, Scott?
Man, it's so glad to be here with you. Doing great, man. It is a great time of year.
It
And
is.
love the tournament, but, we love college football a whole lot more. So always ready to talk about that.
How impressive, before we get into that, how impressive was the SEC showing in basketball this year? Oh, we might have lost Scott again. That happened to him before. I'm not sure why that's disconnecting. We'll wait for him to come back. Anyway, so yeah, we're going to be talking a little bit of re-expansion targets for the SEC out of the ACC and who those schools may be. And we'll throw a dark horse candidate in there too from the Big 12 and kind of see where we're going from that. I'm not sure why it keeps disconnecting, but we've got Scott
I
back.
got a call. I got a phone call, knocked me off. That's my fault. So.
Oh, that's quite all right. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just glad to have you back.
Time of year, so. Anyway.
My question that I started to say before we get into the football stuff is, how impressive was the SEC showing in the basketball this year?
Pretty awesome. Never seen anything like it. There's some. I think the two best teams in the league made it as far as they did. I don't know. I don't know if they can win it all. I thought Florida could win it all a couple of weeks ago until I watched Duke and Alabama play. And I've seen Florida a couple of times in person and watched Alabama very closely. And Alabama beat two of the Final Four teams that are in there now and lost to two of them. So,
yeah.
But hey, watching the whole thing and how you're playing right now, Auburn's playing better than they were 3 weeks ago. Florida looks mortal now. So it wouldn't surprise me if Auburn beats Florida this weekend, and it wouldn't surprise me if Duke handles its business as well. And then, you have a Duke-Auburn national title game. And at this point, I'm not sure anybody can beat Duke. Duke's sizing is impressive. Everybody on their team, when you got 6'6" guards and a 7'2", 300-pound guy in the middle, going to be hard to handle Duke. So, but I do think the four best teams in the country are in this thing. And that's all you can hope for when you get to the Final Four. That just makes it awesome.
So can you explain the unconscious shooting Alabama did against my BYU Cougars, and then the next 2 days later they can't hit the bottom of the ocean? What happened there?
Well, it was about matchups.
Okay.
BYU, just played kind of right into Alabama's style of game and just left them open, and you hit 25 threes, which they've done before.
Okay.
They had 23 against LSU a couple of years ago. And so, but this team really didn't, they weren't predicated on shooting the three. They were the number one team in the nation at scoring at the basket. And they did that pretty easy all year. Duke took that away from them. Alabama didn't shoot it well, but Duke totally shut Alabama's basket game out. They took away Cliff Amore, took away, Grant Nelson. And then made Alabama. They were like, "We're going to make you beat us from outside," and Alabama didn't have any answers inside. When you can't score at the rim against Duke, you can't beat them. It's one thing to hit a bunch of threes, and you need to hit threes to stay in the ball game. But Con Knueppel got off to a great start. I think he had 17, and it was really a night where Duke was off offensively. I didn't think Cooper Flagg played all that well, but everybody else around him did.
Yeah, it was a team effort for sure.
Yeah, and so that kind of spelled doom for Bama as far as that. But listen, getting back to the Elite Eight for the straight year is a heck of an accomplishment. Going to the Final Four a year ago, and man, what Nate Oates has done, he's made Alabama into a top eight team in the nation.
Yeah.
Listen, when you've had the football success Bama's had, that's great. You want to get into March Madness and have a chance to get to the Final Four every year. And the crazy thing, I never thought I'd say this, but Nate Oates is going to win a national title much sooner than later at Alabama. And it's probably only a couple of years away. They are really, really good. They've elevated the program, and now I believe a national title is in sight. I would have never said that 5 or 6 years ago. I never thought Bama would get to the Final Four, and now, here they are knocking on the door every year, and that's all you can hope for when you get into March.
Yeah, I completely agree. And
Yeah.
I was really impressed with the SEC all season long. Certainly
Yeah.
getting 14 teams in, I thought was a bit of a stretch. There might have been 3 teams that didn't need to be in there. But other than that, I mean, the top end is obviously you've seen it shown out in the rest of the tournament. So
Yeah.
I just have to tip my hat to the way that they've played. And I would say this, the SEC's been dominant so long in football, they had to expand everywhere. You eventually in football reach sort of a middling, there's only so high you can go in football.
Right.
So they had to take resources and put them somewhere. So why not dump them into men's basketball? To me, this is just a natural progression of the SEC dominance, and it's just going to continue to grow that gap, in my opinion.
Well, there's no question. I think it starts with great coaches, and you got to have great coaches to have the kind of results that you've had this past year. And the league's got great coaches everywhere. And, Oates and Pearl have been the best coaches in the league the last 5 years. Their track record speaks of it. I mean, Auburn and Alabama now back-to-back Final Fours, Elite Eights, Sweet 16s, all that victories, top 25 wins. They've elevated their programs, and everybody else did as well. Florida, gets Coach Golden, and he has been a tremendous coach in the league and really built Florida last year, and now he's built them into a powerhouse.
Oh, he's getting another phone call, Scott is. So I'm going to take a second while we're waiting for him to come back. Everybody, I appreciate you being here tonight. This is a special Thursday edition. It's in place of my Tuesday night show where I wasn't feeling super great. So I appreciate everybody being patient and coming on over here and watching on a Thursday night. And we have Scott back. There we go.
Yeah, sorry. Keep getting phone calls. Should have jumped on my iPad when I did this. But
it's not a problem.
But coaching has everything to do with getting great players. In the league, we know that great talent is going to show up and play with great coaches. So the league is really positioned itself in the future to be as good as ever. And the crazy thing about the league is elevated now. And Kentucky, Kentucky hadn't won the league in I think 7 or 8 years, which is unbelievable.
It is.
And so and eventually Kentucky is going to be Kentucky again. It's just going to be a matter of time. Will it happen under Mark Pope? Maybe. We'll see. Time will tell. But, and A&M's looking for a new coach now as well. We'll see what ends up happening there. But Ole Miss is, got to the Sweet 16 this year. And, we saw what happened with Arkansas. So, but, and then, baseball is unbelievable. And why you got great coaches all over the league. But yeah, football is what pays the bills.
Absolutely.
And, that's what we talk about every single day. And that's what we're looking forward to the most.
Excellent. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Make sure you follow both Scott and I on Twitter, and then subscribe on YouTube. Turn on your notifications so you know when both of us are posting on our different shows. Why don't you really quick tell everybody what you talk about on I Talk SEC, Scott?
Man, it's been an SEC show since I started it. I started it in 2015, and it's been a blast. And it was a daily talk show, 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, and had some great partners over the years. Jay Barker, a former quarterback at Alabama, Antonio Langham that played defensive back at Bama, just got into the College Football Hall of Fame, and worked with some great people, and been around some really, really great people that have been, part of the SEC. And that's been the most enjoyable part of the relationships that you make, all over the league and all over the South. And it's been amazing. It's been a lot of fun, but it's a passionate group of fans that live in the South, and I've never seen anything like it. College football and the passion here, the fan support, the money that's spent. It's crazy, and I think it's only going to get bigger as we move forward in this new college football playoff scenario that we've got now.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. We're going to have a show with Wild Ute on, because we've done a lot of data analytics. A lot of the stuff that we do is based on data dumps that he goes through and pulls as much data as he can from all of college football. And there's this argument, which is now the king football conference. Is it truly still the SEC, or is the Big Ten come up and started to fill in those shoes? So we can't do that tonight. I don't have time to do that tonight, but we'll have that show. We'll set that up. And I know he'd love to run that with you.
That's a good debate. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay. So really quick, just so everybody knows, tonight we're talking ACC targets to the SEC and what those schools might be. We're going to run through the ones that I would have at the top, and then I'm going to throw a couple extras in at the end of the show. So I'll try to cruise through as many of these as I can. Scott, I never asked you how long you could stay. Are you a half-hour guy? How long can you be
I'll stay half an hour. That'd be great.
Okay, all right. Let's buzz through these then. Let me bring this up, and we'll go through one at a time. Let me bring this up so everybody can see the schools we're going to talk about. Florida State, Clemson, UNC, UVA, and Miami. We'll just take them in that order.
All five.
We'll get to all five of them. Let me get back to, let's see here. Where did I lose this? Okay, so let's start with the first one, Florida State. Kind of give me your overview of what Florida State is and what the likelihood and maybe a timing when you might think. Is that a school that's at the top of the SEC's list for expansion?
I think they were a couple of years ago. Interesting thing, I've got some great friends at Florida State. I got to know Coach Bowden very well towards the end of his life. Last 5 or 6 years, when Coach Bowden turned 90, I got to go down there and actually MC his 90th birthday party at Doak Campbell Stadium. It was one of the best honors of my life. I've done an impression of Coach Bowden for many years. And, he talked like this, and he was a great guy to be around. And, so I've had a lot of relationships with Florida State and within their program. And so I've got to know the administration very well over the years and kind of know where they are. I will say this. I think what happened last year with them suing the ACC and everything that went around the program when they did not get in the playoff.
Yeah.
I actually think it hurt their chances of eventually getting in the Southeastern Conference. I think they have funded up the flagpole in the Big Ten and the SEC, and I think they've gotten responses back from both of those conferences that we're not interested.
Wow.
So I don't think Florida State is going to be an SEC team. 5 years ago, I said that's a done deal. Now, unless some things change, and that could happen because it makes sense, obviously, to have Florida State in the Southeastern Conference, especially with you've got great rivalries there with Florida, and then we'll talk about the other teams as well. But they used to play Auburn, they used to play Tennessee. Florida State's played a lot of teams in this part of the country, and so, but with all the stuff going on there, I don't know if it's going to be viable or not. Some things are going to have to change in the administration with the Southeastern Conference, and certainly at the commissioner's level, and I think in the Big Ten too, for them to move forward. Now, if it starts getting into a race war between the Big Ten and the SEC, then and it probably will, then that would probably get Florida State, back in the good graces. The SEC that doesn't want Florida State to land in the Big Ten. They don't want to allow the Big Ten to get a footprint in the state of Florida or anywhere in the southeastern United States. So can Florida State end up in the SEC eventually? Probably, but it's going to be later than sooner as far as the Noles go.
Okay. Thanks for qualifying that, because I think on the outside looking in, they are a natural fit. You would think they're in the region, they do have partnerships down there, but the relationship thing, does seem to that I keep hearing that through the storylines with Florida
Right.
State that maybe they might have messed that up a little bit.
Right. Yeah, it happened, and some feelings were hurt, and then the SEC is, they got that. Don't let anybody tell you that the SEC is not arrogant, okay? Because it is.
Right.
They bring an arrogance to the table. Do they need to have that arrogance? Them and the Big Ten are going to have that swagger about them, if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but they're going to have that. So, I do think FSU, if and when they end up in a conference, it's going to be the SEC again. I just don't think it's going to be, within the next 2 years or so, which is, the way college football is moving and everything's moving. That's probably a tough timeline for them.
Okay. Let's take the next one and say Clemson. Where are we at with Clemson?
Yeah, there's no doubt that would be the first choice, the SEC, to get Clemson. Clemson is a lot like Auburn. Dabo Swinney is a great friend of mine. Dabo's from Pelham, Alabama, where I live right now, and I've known Dabo close to 50 years.
Wow. Okay.
Done several speeches. Yeah, it's done several speeches at Clemson. You'll love the story real quick. I went and spoke at Clemson in 2015, and it was right into when Dabo was getting started there, and went up there to speak to the team and to some IPTAY members and a lot of his foundations and things. And I got to run the hill with the team. I never, ever thought that was possible. But I got to run the hill before the game, which is
cool.
supposed to be the most exciting, entrance in sports. And I got to do it. And, it's an unbelievable moment, something I'll never forget. But Dabo's a good friend. I played Little League Baseball with his brother up in Hoover, Alabama, and I've known that family forever. And watching him, go from assistant at Alabama to unemployed, and then to one of the top coaches in college football has been a meteoric rise. Dabo's got a ton of former players from Alabama that are on his staff now. Mickey Conn being a defensive coordinator or on the defensive side, covering the secondary now. There's 4 or 5 other guys that are involved in administration there. So Dabo kind of goes way back to his Bama roots, but they are an SEC program. They're an SEC fan base. They travel well. They got a beautiful stadium, beautiful situation. So I don't think there's any question that the Southeastern Conference would covet Clemson. And I think Clemson would love to be in the SEC, both as a basketball team and a baseball team as well. They'd be a great fit in the league, and I think eventually that'll be the first choice for the SEC in their next expansion. No doubt in my mind.
Is that something that could happen sooner than you might see for? Okay, all right.
Yeah, I believe it's going to happen. I believe the expansion is going to happen well within the next 2 years.
Okay.
And it could happen quicker than that. This time next year they're going to be expanding the college football playoff.
Right.
As we know, that's going to open up, all kind of revenue and opportunities, and and I think the SEC and the Big Ten are going to be fighting tooth and nail. Again, I don't see the Southeastern Conference allowing the Big Ten to come in here into the state of South Carolina, which is in the Southeast, and then try to develop the Big Ten model there. The SEC is going to do everything it can to keep the Southeastern Conference and its neighboring states involved in the SEC. And Clemson is a great fit, and eventually I think they'll be in the SEC.
Okay, excellent. Let's move to UNC.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that's the next group on the list.
Okay.
I think there's mutual interest between UNC and the SEC, mainly because of basketball. Now you got Bill Belichick coaching at North Carolina. I honestly believe, they're going to take football seriously now, and hiring Bill Belichick, I love to see it. I thought it was a great hire. Bill will probably stay, I would say, 3 or 4 years till he gets the program going in the right direction, and then, turn it off to maybe his son or somebody else. but this is a very strategic move, by North Carolina to do so. And I think it's an easy move into the SEC, and I think it'd be a perfect fit. Not only for football, but the baseball program is great. We already know about that. But basketball in the league, and then you put North Carolina, being able to play Kentucky and Tennessee every year.
Yeah, that is a monster league for
Yeah,
sure.
and
There is
Clemson
absolutely
and
no
others.
doubt.
Yeah, so that'd be a big move, and I think UNC will definitely be on that list, and I do think they will definitely be a team that's in the SEC in the future for sure.
Okay, UVA.
Virginia, I don't think so. I think Virginia is going to be maybe one of those teams on the outside looking in, and because of where they are in terms of their geographical footprint, I
Right.
think UVA is going to end up being that's more of that's in the Maryland,
Big
top
Ten.
Big Ten area, and I
Yeah.
think UVA will end up being a Big Ten mainly because they're not a powerful team in terms of football, certainly in terms of fan support, all that, and I think that's going to hurt them in terms of the SEC. Great power in basketball, they're struggling a little bit right now, and the baseball program is outstanding, but probably more of a Big Ten fit along the lines of Maryland than the SEC for sure.
I would agree with you. I think
Yeah,
I'm right along with that.
yeah.
How about Miami?
I think Miami is a perfect fit again for the SEC. It fits the criteria we've been talking about. Southeastern United States. Miami. If you've ever been there, it's kind of it's like another country. It's just like, it's on the tip of Florida. It takes forever to get there.
Right.
Always hot, but it is a southeastern state. You know what I'm saying? And and the Big Ten will try to poach them for sure. But I don't see Miami. I don't think it makes a lot of sense for Miami to do that again. From a geographical standpoint, you're playing Florida, you're playing Florida State, and then you've got the other teams in the SEC that would be great matchups with people like Alabama and Auburn and Tennessee and Georgia and people like that. Those would be some really great games, and in basketball and baseball as well. So again, I think the SEC in terms of the state of Florida, in terms of the state of South Carolina and North Carolina, they're going to do everything humanly possible to poach the big schools that are in that. UNC, Miami, Clemson. I think those are perfect fits for the Southeastern Conference, and I believe the SEC is going to do everything in their power to protect those particular schools right there.
So the paternalistic part of it, right? Being
Oh,
just
no
in the
doubt,
region,
no doubt.
that's so you're pretty firm about them putting up a fence around the SEC, pretty much everywhere up through North Carolina.
Yeah,
Now, there's one other wild card I want to throw in there, and that's Kansas. Do you
yeah.
see any opportunity where they might move west a little bit?
Well, I'll tell you this about down at the SEC meetings in 2017, there were two schools that approached the SEC at that time about making a move, and it was Kansas and Oklahoma.
Okay.
That was all the way back in 2017. And I remember us talking about it. I was actually at the SEC meetings that weekend when that stuff started getting out, and talked to some pretty important people at the time. And we actually talked about it the entire, it was the spring of 2017. And we spent a lot of time in the spring talking about that. But there's no doubt that the SEC would love to have Kansas.
Okay.
Again, you've got great, already some great rivalries there. Kansas, Missouri, Kansas, Arkansas, Kansas, Texas A&M. We know about those rivalries that have been in the old Big 12.
Right. The old Big Eight. Yeah.
Yeah, the old
Certainly.
Big 8 and
Yeah.
into the Big 12, and
Yeah.
they played for many years in Kansas versus Texas, and so I think again that's another program that's gotten better in football, not very good in baseball, but you can't argue about where they stand in basketball. And I threw
Right.
out the rivalry of North Carolina, Kentucky. Can you imagine Kentucky and Kansas playing every year, and and the other
Yeah.
SEC game, it would be an unbelievable move. And so yeah, I definitely think that there will be some kind of concerted effort from the SEC to poach Kansas, because I'm going to tell you right now, make no mistake, the Big Ten will try to do it. And
Oh, I lost him again. I had one more question for him. We got a super chat. Mark, I'll definitely ask him when he comes back. Hopefully he comes back. And we'll get one more question out. There he is.
yeah, got to call again. My bad.
That's quite all right. Let me ask you the super chat really quick. Mark Bowman, $10 super chat. He says, do you foresee an SEC versus Big Ten crossover game in football? And I'm assuming you would want to account for one of those per school in each conference once a year, right?
Well, yeah, you got some going on now. You got Texas, Ohio State this year to start the season.
Right.
Which is going to be a great matchup, and I think they'll play it again next year at Texas. And then Alabama's playing Wisconsin again this year, hosting them. And and there's some other. Alabama's supposed to play Ohio State and begin a new series with them in 2 years, home and away. And so I think Tennessee has got a battle with Michigan coming up. I think you're going to see that. The big holdup now is whether or not the SEC is going to go to a 9-game schedule. There's still debate about that. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. It's already tough enough. And you go to a 9-game schedule, then you're going to end up eliminating a lot of these interconference these great opportunities to play these big games.
Yeah.
Notre Dame and Texas A&M. It's not a Big Ten SEC matchup, but that happens again this year as well. Man, A&M goes to Notre Dame, which I love these kind of games. I think they're great for college football. But depending on what the Big Ten does moving forward, depending on what the SEC does moving forward, I think both conferences want to play these games, and I think they're great for the sport. The question is it going to happen? And that all depends on whether or not the league goes to 9 games. And the vote on that's going to come not this year at the SEC meetings, but this time next year once the expansion of the college football playoff happens.
Which we all know is coming. There's no doubt about it. I'm sure they're probably planning already to go to 16 teams, get as many games in there as possible. And boy, I can't wait. I've been waiting for this. Well, as a BYU fan, I've been waiting for it for more than 50 years to get the best people in a tournament to play every year. And I think it's what all Americans are wanting and should desire. So one last question. By my count, you counted 5 schools that you think the SEC is going to go after. Mm-hmm. That's not a round number. So do they go for all 5 of those? Do they bring in one other? And if they do go for one other, what would that school be?
I think it'd be Kansas. I think I'm with you on the 6 teams. And my prediction right now would be, eventually Florida State gets in the good graces.
Okay.
Make it happen. If Florida State, to me, the 2 wild cards would be Kansas and Florida State. I think the other 4 are locks, the ones that we talked about earlier. Miami, definite lock. Clemson, definite lock, and certainly North Carolina. And then when you start, looking at the other footprints that we're talking about and how that's going to work out, I don't think there's any doubt they'd like to add Florida State and love to add Kansas. That would be 6 great teams. Totally fulfills the footprint there. Keeps it from the Midwest down to the SEC.
Right.
But the 2 wild cards obviously would be FSU and Kansas. And if the SEC doesn't get those 2, I think those are big brands. I think those 2 would end up in the Big Ten eventually, because we're looking at 4 great conferences moving forward. That's the footprint. That's the way it's going to be, the Power 4. And the question is, where do they end up? Where do these big programs end up? To me, right now, it's going to be either the Big Ten or the SEC. And, the SEC is going to fight tooth and nail to get all the Midwest guys they can get in here. Because I think Notre Dame eventually is going to end up in the Big Ten. I think it's too much of a
I don't know. If you're Notre Dame, why give up your freedom?
I agree, but the TV money moving forward,
it's true.
It's bigger than what Notre Dame's getting now. It's a big slice of the pie, and that's going to end up driving everything. And Notre Dame, I've always said, I've got great friends at Notre Dame, people that went there, played there, and I think they want to eventually get in the conference and have something to play for. And I think eventually Notre Dame is going to end up doing it. You can only be independent. We're in a new age now.
Sure.
It is a different animal now, and being in a conference is a security blanket. It's money that you've never had before. And Notre Dame is no stranger to exposure and
Right.
all that. But I think it'd even give them more exposure, being in a Big Ten. And they've got a lot of great rivalries there. They played Indiana in the playoff. You've got Michigan, you've got Ohio State, you've got
Right.
Purdue. You just got some natural rivals there that are perfect and better suited for you and better suited for your product. So I think it's going to happen. I think eventually Notre Dame's going to end up in the Big Ten, and that'd be a big linchpin for the Big Ten, certainly.
I completely, I do agree with that part. I don't know if when they make the move, eventually they're going to probably be forced into some type of a move, just from an organizational standpoint, as we look at
Exactly.
the CFP structure. But anyway, okay, I'm going to let you go. I've kept you for your 30 minutes. I appreciate you coming on, Scott.
Yes, sir.
Really quick, tell everybody where they can find you, and then just so you know, we're going to do this again.
Yeah, let's
We'll
do
have
it.
to stay in contact. I want to be on your show. I would love to
Yeah,
do that if you could ever
yeah,
fit me in.
absolutely. We'll do it, and we can do this a couple times a month, and I'd love to do it. And
Okay.
it's great talking to the BYU fans. I know you guys have a great following and a great football tradition, and probably going to be really, I would say, a top 5 team in college basketball next year for sure. With the
It's
recruiting,
looking good. It's
yeah,
looking
y'all
good.
y'all are going to be really good. Got a great coach, and
Yeah.
that nobody. I was listen. We didn't want to play you this year, and but
Well, Alabama was a buzzsaw this year. I got to tip
yeah,
my hat. They played extraordinarily well. So,
yeah,
it reminded me of those UNLV teams in 89 and 90
yeah,
and 91. They just looked like nobody could beat them, right?
yeah,
Every
yeah.
time they put the ball in the air, they
Yeah,
won.
it was a great game, great performance. Getting to the Elite Eight was a great thing, but yeah, I think BYU is going to be back in the middle of the national championship talk next year. Going to have a great freshman on that team, and I
Yeah.
think BYU is going to be very good. And the football program's always very good as well. Always tough, hard nosed, well coached, great fan support. It's a great thing.
Well, thanks a lot, Scott. Appreciate it. You have a
Thank you.
great night.
Yes, sir, brother. Thank
Okay,
you.
we'll see you later. Okay, bye-bye. Oh, Scott coming on. I got to clap him. That was fantastic. I appreciate him spending some time with me today. We are, as a channel, we're trying to do more SEC stuff. So if I could get even Scott to come on once a month, I think that would be huge for us to get this additional insight. As you all know, we cover realignment really, tip to top of our heads and down to our toes. And there's great insights in there that we wouldn't have gotten if we didn't talk to somebody that's in the beltway, as it were, in the Southeastern Conference. So just to review kind of what we just went through, it sounds like, and he's connected, he's been doing this stuff more than 20 years in the SEC, that they do want to set up some sort of a gate system around the Southeastern Conference and try to lock out the Big Ten from moving south. I was kind of surprised by a couple things, and I'll go through questions. We'll get to as many of these as we can, guys. I'll probably go another half hour or so. I don't have any comments flagged. I was here running the ship myself, so I'm going to try to get to as many comments as I can. But if you want your comment to be read, guaranteed, make it a super chat. Other than that, I'll get to as many as I can from start to finish, and we'll cover as much ground as possible. But it was really interesting that he talked about Kansas, he talked about Miami. Those were two big surprises for me. It's not really a surprise to say Clemson. It's not really a surprise to say Florida State. It's not really a surprise to say UNC. Those are traditional, well, certainly in basketball, UNC, but traditional football powers in South Carolina, in Clemson, and in Florida State. But Miami being in there, I found that interesting. That's fascinating to me. Kansas is another one. Obviously, going west, being over in that area because of the connection with Missouri shouldn't be a shocker necessarily, but it is a surprise to me that they're actively being talked about, and might receive that call up, or he kind of said that maybe the Big Ten would be looking at Kansas as well. So certainly a lot of things that we can cover in your comments. So make sure you're posting as many comments as you can right now. I'll get to as many as possible, but I want to thank again Scott for coming on. It's at I Talk SEC. Find him there, and great content. And I will take him up on that idea of coming back on maybe 1 or 2 times a month. That would be fantastic. I'm trying to get as much SEC coverage as we can. It's an underserved conference, certainly, as we've gone through these last 2 years with the College Football Mafia Network. But it's not because we haven't wanted to. It's just because the SEC guys in general haven't really needed for anything, right? They know they're at the top of the hill, and why are we talking about some of these other conferences? But now with realignment opening back up, some of these other fan bases being involved in some of these crossover areas, I think there will be more that we cover. But I'll review as many of these things as I can that we talked about tonight. And then I would encourage anybody who didn't catch us live that are just joining us right now, go back and watch the first half of the show. Fascinating topics. We talked about the SEC in basketball and where that has gone this year. Certainly it was not a surprise necessarily, but certainly opened a lot of eyes. As many schools were competing in the tournament this year for basketball. And then always talking SEC football. And the brands that I brought up in my show bump, and then I threw in Kansas. So just to quickly review, he thinks Florida State gets in to the SEC, gets an invite, but it might not be right away. That might be one that comes a little bit later. He seemed to intimate, and I don't want to take him out of context, but it was a lot of relationship building that needed to sort of happen again. Some of the stuff that the SEC saw come out of Florida State, out of Tallahassee in the last couple of years, I guess maybe that stuff might not have been looked on with a positive light. So he definitely thinks that they will get an SEC invite eventually, just not maybe in this first tranche of schools that might be going we might hear about in the next 18 months or 2 years. Clemson, he thought's a shoe-in. North Carolina, he thought's a shoe-in. Miami, surprisingly, he thinks a shoe-in. And then Kansas, he thinks the SEC would fight for them as well. The one out of all those schools that he just thinks is a Big Ten school, and that's University of Virginia. One thing that I didn't think to ask, because we were talking about all these other brands, what would the SEC do with North Carolina State? That's an open question. So I would encourage you guys, ask him on Twitter. Say, hey, what do you think about North Carolina State? And would they come with North Carolina? I'm kind of thinking if they want North Carolina that bad, they might be willing to take North Carolina State. I've always sort of looked on that like, really? But maybe that's what gets them to 22, and now you have a now rounded number in that conference. All right, so let's get to as many of these comments as I can in the next 25 minutes or so. And I appreciate everybody watching this tonight. Make sure you're following on Twitter. Subscribe on Twitter and on YouTube. If you're watching on Twitter, hop over to YouTube and give us a subscription. Just hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out, College Football Mafia Network. If you're subscribed, you will continue to get those updates if you turn on notifications when we have shows. And yeah, lots of fun. So I'm just going to start grabbing comments as we're going through here. And if I miss you, I miss you. If it's not a super chat, it's just going to be the way it is. RT checking in, another valuable member of the Mafia family, saying most of Florida seems to be more northern culturally, at least the larger cities. Okay. I don't know. I don't live in Florida. It sounded to me like they want to put a fence anywhere from North Carolina all the way over to Kansas, and they don't want the Big Ten encroaching at all. is his way of looking at it. So we'll have to see, but that's certainly something you'd have to be regional, I think, to understand that a little bit more. Follow up with RT says, but that may be the case throughout the South. Yeah, you may be right. That may be the case, RT. Almighty Finn, OG member of the Mafia family, being here. You can't keep the Big Ten out of the South if the SEC lets FSU go to Fox. Well, obviously, you're exactly right, Finn. You're exactly right. No other way to put it. If Florida State wants to hold out for that Big Ten Champagne invite, it would be a Champagne invite. That would be a godsend for Florida State fans. And the Seminoles certainly, I think, deserve it. Yeah, then Fox is in the Southeast, and now all bets are off, right? Let's see here. Ryan C. Good to see you here, Ryan C. Jacksonville and Tallahassee have a southern feel. The other large cities, not so much. Okay. Yeah. There's really nothing. I'll just take that on face value. Steele Austin, good to see you, Steele. Thanks for being here, man. Love the idea of Miami and the SEC. Makes all the sense in the world. All right, there you go. There you go. James Davis, if you don't want the Big Ten in the South, you have to take FSU. No other way around it. So, yeah, that's, I think, kind of what he was saying. At the end of the day, the Big Ten making a place for that southeastern area for recruiting, they'd have to have at least one school. The chalk has been up to this point that would be Miami. But man, if they could get Florida State, I think that they would certainly try to do that. They're not going to overpay for them, I don't think. Devil Frog, good to see you, Devil Frog. The Big Lubbock, A&M, and UT get the same rate from the PUF for the per student payout, which is disproportionately more than the other public schools in Texas. I think he's talking about the academics and the payouts they do in the state of Texas, Devil Frog. So there you go. Take that on its face value. Mighty Finn says, at FF18 Buffs, the city of Coral Gables will not let UNM put a stadium in their city. They don't want the traffic. SEC wants schools to have on-campus stadium. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. A lot of this stuff we're assuming, right? We think that they've done that in the past. That doesn't mean that would be the behavior going forward, though. We've got to be very careful about making statements about what it would look like in the future. But yeah, obviously, if that's been up to now, then that's a good way to look at it. Brett Taylor checking in saying, I got to believe FSU and Clemson will be in the first two dominoes to fall in the next 2 years. And I'm thinking he's saying the SEC. Mr. Monkey says, checking in, saying, that Bomber, interesting to me, too, that he kind of put UVA in the Big Ten, wasn't that enthusiastic about that much. Yeah. Yeah, so University of Virginia, more than likely going to the Big Ten, at least according to Scott. So, Tempest checking in. It's just haters at Seminole School. That would be Florida State. People love to hate Florida State for some reason. I don't know. I don't. I'm not one of those people. Let's see here. Noel 76. I lived in South Florida. It's nothing like the rest of the South. Okay. Moen, I see you chime in here. How are you?
Doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing okay. What's going on tonight?
Not much. I saw you were co-hostless for a half hour. I figured I would hop on here and help you
for a
out.
few minutes. Yeah, I appreciate that. So, did you catch the interview?
I did.
Okay, and what'd you think about what he had to say about those schools?
Interesting thoughts. Very interesting thoughts. But I mean, part of the thing that I found interesting is you can't put a fence around the entire Southeast without expanding to be 24 teams.
Yeah, you saw me counting there, right? I was doing the math to see.
Yeah, so I mean, if you take those schools, you still leave Duke out there, you still leave Georgia Tech out there. there's no way you can protect all the states.
Yeah.
I just don't know how that's possible.
It's I think, his point is maybe that those top brands you have to take regardless, and maybe the other ones are maybe nice to haves, but maybe they don't go out of their way to take those additional schools. So it's not really possible to say you're going to lock down the entire Southeast, but they would take the best brands that were available, I think, is what he's trying to get at.
Yeah, but I think, listen, if they grabbed Miami, the Big Ten would take Florida State.
You think it's an either or?
I think it's an either or. I don't think.
Okay.
Look, the SEC is not going to have 3 schools in the state of Florida.
Okay.
I mean, Florida's a huge market. We all know about the recruiting that comes out of there. Ohio State recruits out of there quite a bit, but I cannot see Florida, the University of Florida, allowing 2 more schools into the SEC in the state of Florida.
Yeah, I mean, you saw my surprise about the Miami pick, right? Yeah, I can't disagree with you. I think that would be it would be a big baller move, though, if they did try to do that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Look, if they could pull that off, congratulations to them.
Yeah.
Boy, I think that would cause some disharmony among Gator Nation.
I gotta believe so too, but again, he's closer to he deals with these guys on a daily, right? So I have to give him credit for being in the region and being in the marketplace for as long as he had. Certainly that his Dabo Sweeney storyline was fascinating. So he's obviously got massive connections down there. So maybe there's more that has been going on than we have been told or that has been reported.
Yeah, I've been saying it forever. I think Clemson is the most SEC team out of the ACC expansion targets.
That's what he
available.
Said. Yeah.
That's the traditions, Death Valley. Now you've got 2 Death Valleys in your conference when you take them, but I guess you can have a rivalry game on who really has Death Valley between LSU and Clemson. But,
right.
But yeah, Clemson's an F. I've said that all along. Like if we just did, I'm going to wrap up this weekend the comparative study on the Big Ten and the available candidates. I bet if we did one on the SEC, Clemson would probably match up with everything SEC wants.
We know it's coming, right? This is not an if, it's a when situation. So, if Clemson, it seemed to me like Clemson was the top of his shopping list. So, that'll be fascinating to see how that plays out for sure.
Yeah. The other thing is I know he doesn't like Virginia. He thinks Virginia is more of a Big Ten school, but listen, Virginia's going wherever North Carolina's going.
Yeah, I don't know. There's telltale signs that say all kinds of things. So
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
right, we'll see.
We ran out of time. I didn't get to the North Carolina State question, but that would have been my follow-up is where do we go with North Carolina State? And, do they get the free ride with North Carolina because they want them so much?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Absolutely great question because as far as we know, there's still a Wolfpack backpack. I'm of the belief that that's going to be torn asunder, as it were, but how that happens, I don't know.
Yeah, I think, I don't know how it happens either, but something needs to change, right? Things need to move in a different way to see some of those alignments modified for sure. RT giving away 5 gifted memberships. Moen, you want to do the player on that?
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
RT has gifted 5 memberships to the College Football Mafia family. Jason Ritchie, Demon Malik, Stevie G, Alexander Smitley, and Devil Frog were all gifted memberships by our good friend RT. Make sure you thank RT if you are here in chat. If you're not and you're watching us on demand, go ahead and leave my thanks in the comments. RT, we appreciate you so much. That's 5 more people who next week on Thursday, this time, same same Mafia time, same Mafia channel. We're running our first Capo Cabana members only live stream. Crowning the contenders in the Big Ten. So I've got quite a sizable presentation on which of the potential candidates from the Big 12 and the ACC fit best inside the Big Ten. So definitely, now that you are a member, you guys can check that out. Thank you, RT. You're already a member. You can definitely check it out. You'll be a VIP there in the Capo Cabana. But yes, thank you again, RT. We'll give you one more sound effect because that was legitness.
Yes, it was.
That was legitness. Yeah, it was.
And I just wanted to throw in on top of that, by the way, that we do have a bunch of gifted memberships. Terms are coming up right now. So if you were gifted a membership before and you want those membership benefits back, make sure you hit that subscribe button and then hit the join link on the College Football Mafia Network main page, or go to the $ next to the comment section and become a renewed member off of your old gifted memberships. We certainly would like to have as many of those gifted membership people turn into full-time members and consider becoming a permanent member of the Mafia family. We certainly appreciate it. So thanks again, RT. If you received a gifted membership tonight, consider giving somebody else one. Pay it forward. Karma's real. And yeah. All right, let's get to as many more of these comments as we can get to. Daniel Gygax checking in, contributor extraordinaire and member of the College Football Mafia family, saying, I'm wondering the timeline to add the ACC schools. Could it be as soon as this summer? The schools announced they are leaving. I'm not sure that Scott would have even been able to answer this, Daniel, so I'm sorry I didn't get to that while he was on. But at the end of the day, the timing is really going to be dictated by what these conferences want to spend out, right? Do they want to help subsidize some of these larger leave penalties? It's $18 million per year. It comes off. If you wait 2 or 3 years, it gets much cheaper. I don't know if they're going to bring in schools at 100% funding. Moen, what do you think about that?
We talked about it before. If you're a member, you might have watched our last members only stream, the Carolina Reaper. The longer they stay in the ACC, it becomes a sunk cost fallacy, essentially. North Carolina needs to get out as soon as possible to maximize their potential. If they go to the SEC, and what we have been told is accurate, that the SEC has 4 pro forma slots available, then North Carolina could get full membership in the SEC right away. Yeah, it just makes sense for them to move. I still think 2027. We've talked about this before. I think the Big Ten, the SEC scheduling agreement, that's still up in the air. This new college football playoff format, that is still up in the air. That'll probably extend next year. We're probably going to get to 16 teams, 14 or 16, one or the other. So I just see all these signs kind of point to 2027. I think the Big Ten is going to get some money from their partners to expand, and I think that's going to come as part of an extended media deal. They're probably going to extend past that 2029 deadline they currently have.
If they're willing to pay the same amount of money, it would not surprise me if that happens. They extend and add at the same time, and try to keep that media evaluation as close to what they're currently getting as possible. I think anymore, everybody knows the economics in sports right now, and that money isn't just falling from the heavens. So I think the schools right now would take that maybe with a nominal bump without much complaint, considering how much different they are to all the other conferences. I can't imagine they'd turn anything like that down. RT, I'm curious about the potential for a failure of private equity in the Big 12 and upcoming media renegotiation. Moen, do you have an opinion on that?
I can tell you that there were more no votes now than there were before on the Redbird Capital deal. The ACC, what happened with the ACC, I think there were some people who were leaning towards yes, who might be leaning towards no. I don't know if Yormark can still land that plane or land that bird, as it were. We'll have to see. But listen, Big 12 media renegotiations, I've said this for a long time now. I still think it's the case. Big 12 needs to get with Time Warner Media. They need to get on TNT and TBS, and they need to have one of these Turner networks. I mean, we've got it varies what they call it. It's either True TV or Turner Sports, depending on what mood they're in.
Yeah.
That needs to become the Big 12 network. The Big 12
Yeah.
needs its own cable network to match up with the Big 10 and the SEC, and even the ACC. They've still got a cable network. So I think Big 12 has to go and has to start pushing, knocking on some doors over there at Time Warner.
I would agree with you. I think that's right. And I think that challenge is there were a lot of yeses for bringing in schools for realignment for private equity, but these schools that want to use private equity just for operations purposes, not a lot of people are super excited about that. So we'll have to see. Time will tell. But the money was there. People were more positive than negative maybe a year ago. Now I don't know where it's at with the Big 12. So good question, RT. Appreciate it. Brett Taylor says Dabo Sweeney on an interview on YouTube talked about a new governance structure for football schools. This is what I call the Super League. 48 teams plus teams break away from the NCAA governance. Yeah, you're right along with what a lot of other commentators, including us on this channel, has said about Super League. Isn't necessarily Super League. It's more about the schools that can afford to break away, and are they the best brands that are going to do that? Moen, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the NCAA doesn't have any teeth. I mean, seriously, it was revealed yesterday. I don't know if you guys read it. Michigan State is under investigations for NCAA violations.
So stupid. For what?
For recruiting violations when Tucker was the coach. So I think it goes back to the first year of Mel Tucker as a coach at Michigan State. They are now under NCAA investigation for that. And Michigan, who
cheated to get a national championship.
Who cheated, we can say it, they cheated.
Wow.
Has had no punishment levied on them by the NCAA yet. So Michigan cheats. Michigan State gets NCAA violations levied against them.
You just can't make this crap up, yeah. Moen. I can't believe it. That is remarkable. Old School checking in saying all this tough talk about they don't rant FS rate, I guess. Rant
I think
FSU,
it means want. Don't want.
Want? Don't want FSU is hilarious, especially when everyone knows damn well FSU is the first choice for both conferences.
Well, Old School, I'm going to have to disagree with you on this one. Notre Dame is the first choice for the Big Ten. Notre Dame. But yeah, I think, listen, Florida State's going to be a desirable candidate. I'm just of the opinion that they're more of an SEC school.
Yeah. I think SEC is the more natural fit. That's the easiest way to put it. I think the most of the fans would prefer to be South. There is the idea of the egalitarian. We're very special, and that thought takes you to the Big Ten. But cost-benefit analysis, going to the SEC makes the most sense. Absolutely nobody disputes that. Ryan C. checking in. I think at the last minute, ESPN is going to negotiate Clemson, FSU, UNC to the SEC. Moen.
I 100% agree and add University of Virginia in there. I think if they've got 4, all they've got to renegotiate is scheduling that 9th game and whatever conference playing games and their new scheduling agreement with the Big Ten. But listen, I think the SEC doesn't want any part of an extended search for expansion candidates or vetting of expansion candidates. I think they take 4 and just shut it down.
Yeah, I think 4 is the number as well. I think there's nice have-tos, but I think 4 is the number if they can get them.
Right, and you get UNC and Virginia, you get into 2 new markets, you get Clemson and Florida State who have spectacular football brands.
Yeah, I agree. And it was fun to see him light up about SEC and basketball. I don't know if you saw the beginning of the show, but he was all glowing about the quality of these teams coming out of the SEC for basketball. And the big picture idea of adding Kansas and North Carolina, he seemed giddy about.
Well, I mean, he's got to be excited about something. The SEC hasn't played in a national championship game in 2 seasons, so
Yeah, well. Steel Austin, if the SEC took FSU, Miami, Clemson, UNC, that would be awesome. Okay. Try to get to as many of these other. Joe Applewhite, UNC grad. I have a friend named Anthony that is high up with Duke that says Duke is pushing hard to get into the Big Ten, Moen.
everybody's pushing hard to get into the Big Ten or the SEC, guys. It's a beauty contest. Everybody's running out there to try to make themselves as attractive as possible for 2027.
Yep, I agree with that. I think that's exactly right. Devil Frog says if Notre Dame doesn't go to the Big Ten, they join the Big 12 where they can be top dog. Why would they join the Big 12? Devil Frog. They're not going to join.
If they're going to join any conference, it's a Big Ten.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that.
And as far as could they negotiate a similar deal that they have with the ACC with the Big 12? They could. Problem is that they've got their media contract on a sliding scale.
Yeah.
They need to have marquee matchups to make that pay out.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. All right, I'm going to get to one more comment, and we're going to get out of here, Mo, and we're going to cut it short tonight just because I'm a little tired today. Let's see here. Where's it at? I just lost it. Oh, my gosh. I'm sorry. Steel Austin says, Kansas, baby. That was interesting. I had to throw that in as a also ran. I cannot. I guess this will be the last one from Shonsky. Sorry.
Here's this one for Fergie. I want to answer.
Yeah,
this.
go ahead.
Mo
please.
Mo and I have a vision that your big project will put Colorado in top 4 options. Colorado is in there, Fergie, but you're going to have to watch next Thursday. I kind of already revealed who number 1 was, so watch next Thursday and figure out how well Colorado Buffaloes scored in that decision.
And Chris G, we'll finish with this one. Chris being a short-term member, but a contributing member of the College Football Mafia family. Thanks for being here, Chris. Sorry, Moen, wrong again. UVA does not get you the Virginia DC market.
Again, Chris, we've had discussions on this in the comment section. Virginia is the flagship school, University of Virginia is the flagship school of the state of Virginia. And they're tied to UNC. So they're handcuffed to the prettiest girl at the ball. So they're going to get taken. And you're right. Virginia Tech might get better ratings in DC, but it's not going to matter. It's still going to get the SEC carriage rates for the SEC network.
One more question for you, Mo, and then we'll get out of here. This one was from Justin R. Question: do you think ESPN would become a media partner for the Big Ten along with Fox, CBS, and NBC if that contract came up in 2029?
Absolutely not. I think they want to avoid the ESPN. I think the SEC definitely wants them to avoid becoming an ESPN partner as well. Always good to have somebody to bid against.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, putting them in the ESPN's pocket, that does no favors for the SEC.
Yeah, I think Bob would agree as well. He said that having those two sort of bipolar forces working against each other really is what continues to drive the values for these bigger conferences. And I don't see they gain anything by doing anything with the Big Ten. They might make a bid to do some stuff with Notre Dame as one-off stuff to maybe bid against NBC, but I don't see ESPN doing anything with the Big Ten at all. All right, I appreciate everybody being on tonight. Moen, do you want to say any last words before we get out of here?
We'll see you tomorrow night for the Big Freaking Friday show, 7 p.m. Eastern. Join myself, Nate, and Wild Ute, and we'll have a good old time. We'll get a little Georgia Tech in there. We'll get a little drinking going. Maybe play some ping pong.
Sure.
Some of those kind of fun things.
I've got the ping pong in the back room over here. I appreciate everybody joining tonight. This was a lot of fun. I hope everybody enjoyed. Scott, remember, look him up at iTalkSEC on Twitter. Make sure you subscribe to his show, and make sure you subscribe here, and then follow both Moen and I on Twitter and turn on those notifications. So for Moen, Bomber checking out. Everybody have a great night. Stay out of trouble. And we will say peace. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow night.